Syracuse managed to squeak out a win against Buffalo in the Dome Tuesday. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case last night against St. Bonaventure, falling to 10-2 with a 57-60 overtime loss at the Dome. We'll give you the good and bad of that. Plus,
Coach, was O'Shea's call there?
Yeah, I don't talk about referees. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Well, Coach might not want to talk about the officiating, but we do. All of that. Plus, we'll turn to Joe for a look ahead to Eastern Michigan coming to the Dome Wednesday, December 27th at 7 o'clock. Finally, a game back on ESPN. Let's go.
Make some noise, Orange fans. It's time for the Cuse Nation podcast with Sean and Joe. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/Cuse Nation podcast.
All right, what's up, Cuse Nation? Thanks for tuning in to episode 45 of the Cuse Nation podcast. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, and YouTube, and now, in fact, SoundCloud. So, once again, I'm Sean alongside my good buddy, Joe. Joe, bah humbug, buddy. Bah freaking humbug.
What's going on?
Yeah. Well, we'll give you the quick flyover version of the Buffalo game, and we'll save some of the good stuff for the end. A sloppy win against Buffalo, I believe, kind of laid the groundwork in the path to this loss. I wasn't very impressed with the Buffalo game at all. I was a little worried about. Honestly, I was more worried about the hobbling players at the end of that game. Another physical game, and I was just a little worried about who all was going to be at 100%. But in the end, it looked like everybody seemed to be okay except for Sidibe once again. And the numbers without Sidibe in, by the way, are before last night's game. Let's see, we were averaging 62 points per game in 36%. And without him in, we're averaging... we allowed 62 points per game in 37.6% shooting. And without him in, we're allowing 68.5 and 41.5% shooting. So, and the boards went down from 44 per game to 37. So, correlation at least without him in, especially with Chukwu and his foul troubles and having to put Merrick in there. Just a little short, and hopefully he's okay before conference play on New Year's Eve. Joe, what do you have to say about the Buffalo game?
I think it was just a little sloppy. Again, we came out... a
lot of turnovers. Yeah,
we came out slow. We ended up doing enough to take the lead at halftime, and then came out the second half. And, I mean, I don't want to say played one of our worst second halves, but... usually we were coming back in the second half, or we're turning a smaller lead into a bigger lead. And Buffalo came back a couple times to take the lead and kind of went back and forth. And if it wasn't for Brissett and his free throw shooting, I don't know.
I know
he went for 25 and 8, and we ended up eventually winning the game by 7. But it was real sloppy and too close for comfort for me. But Buffalo they were kind of game. I mean, they surprised me with the way that they handled our offense there for a little while and in spurts. But again, it just comes down to us not being able to hit jumpers, really.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Brissett, he was 16 for 16 from the free throw line.
I believe so, yeah.
And when we talked after, you said, a win is a win, whatever. And I feel you. It was a little sloppy. It didn't sit well with me. I wasn't very happy about it. Like you said, just can't hit anything, man. And it's just so frustrating to watch because there's so much talent, I believe, on this team.
You don't play you don't come out and have your A game every night. You know what I mean? So if you're going to play ugly, it's better to play ugly and get a win.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, last night's game against Bonaventure, terrible, just awful, just a really hard game to watch. And despite it all, they almost won, and they probably should have, could have, would have 100 different times, 100 different ways. even before overtime. 64% from the line. That's terrible. They left 10 points at the line up for grabs. 15.7% 3-point shooting behind the arc, and 30% from the floor. That is not gonna win games. They let Jalen Adams go off in the first, very reminiscent of the Kansas game. They managed to completely shut him out in the second half, though. He only scored 2 points in the overtime. He didn't even score anything in the second half, and his team couldn't make up for that, really. But it did take Syracuse the final 7 minutes and 17 seconds to cut that deficit back to tie the game, and St. Bonaventure didn't score a point in those remaining 7 minutes and 17 seconds of the second half, and it took us that long to pull it tied to go into overtime.
Yeah. We I actually looked at it today, and I think with the 11 minutes 45 seconds in the second half, they hit a jumper and took the lead 51-38, 13-point lead. And they had 51 points at that time. And that's 11 minutes, 45 seconds left in the second half. And we went into overtime 53-53. So we went on, a 15-2 run, something like that, in the last, 11 minutes, 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And we had so many missed opportunities, some bad turnovers.
Inbounds pass, another inbounds pass turnover. Just blatantly bad pass. Terrible.
No, well, again, it's just one of those things where I look at it like, I don't know. I talked to my father about it. He's talking about how he doesn't like Howard and all his mistakes, but it's just like NFL. It's easy to blame the quarterback, but sometimes it's the receiver's fault. So, and I think that was one of those things where Frank Howard was throwing it to the open area and Chuka went the wrong way, and it was just kind of a miscommunication, but nonetheless, they're just unfortunate plays and times like that when you're coming back and trying to win a game. You know?
And you talk about it. You talk about Chukwu, and it was a bad pass. There's no doubt about it. But Chukwu's got to tighten up his game, man. You can't miss a dunk again. Yeah. This guy misses dunks like it's going out of style, and he started off kind of hot hitting the dunks. It seemed like he found his footing in that area underneath the net. And now, just the past couple games, it's been terrible. Some more bad calls, or bad fouls, I should say, really on him. The missed dunks I mentioned, failed fast breaks. I mean, so many opportunities to just put this game away.
Missed calls. Brissett has the layup right at the end of the, we're settling for jumpers that we haven't made all game. Howard Washington comes in and takes a jumper out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, that was terrible.
Even when we do drive and we're supposed to do basically what works and what puts points on the board, and go to the line and drive and be aggressive, and we get to the line and Frank Howard can't hit a free throw, or we miss a free throw, so.
And, in the end, Joe...
It was rough.
It was rough. And in the end, look, we're going to talk about the officiating coming up. I think it needs to be discussed. Coach didn't want to talk about it. He just didn't want to lay the blame at the foot of the refs. And I totally agree. So I'm just going to say this. At the end of the day, as Joe would say, at the end of the day, you got to score. You score, you take a couple of those opportunities and turn them around. We don't even go into overtime, and we win that game. So... I don't think we lost the game because of the refs, but let's be honest. A terrible call cost us big at the end with 11 seconds left. Although Brissett on his finish at regulation, he had said there was no one to contest me. He said I didn't know how much time was left, so he was basically unaware of how much time was left, and he took a bad shot, and he acknowledged that he took a bad shot, and he missed it, and he had a little bit of time to really get his footing and take that shot, take a better shot, but he didn't, so we went into overtime, right?
Yeah.
Then we look into overtime, and what was it? It was like a minute 34 or something like that, where Bonaventure couldn't score. You had Merrick with 3 offensive rebounds. He was just, I mean, he's so good. I love him. He just is. He changes a game. He can change a game so quickly. Doing the little things like we've talked about 100 times, and we'll continue to talk about to give him his credit. He scored the first 2 points overtime, and then it felt good. It felt like it felt good, and it just came down to not being able to score. And what else do you have to say about that before we get into the officiating?
No, I just going into. We've had teams like this in the past too, where offensively we struggle. We only have a couple guys, and if you get some defenders like the guards that St. Bonaventure had, there's going to be nights where we're going to be playing in the 50s and the 60s, and our defense is bad. As much as we let Jalen Adams go off for 21 in the first half, our defense played good enough.
Yeah, I would agree
to win that game. I mean, we kept them at 53. So there's going to be nights where, when we play teams that are struggling offensively, and it's going to be in the 50s, and all we have to do is get in high 50s, low 60s. There's going to be other nights where teams can score a little bit better. We might have to score in the high 60s, maybe low 70s, but there's got to be a number we got to hit, and we have to be able to hit more than 53.
Yeah, you got to do better than 30% from the floor.
Right.
It's what it comes down to. Hit your foul shots. I mean,
look at how good our defense played in the last 11 minutes and 45 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 15-2 run, but our defense played, but you can't score more than 15 points in the last 11 minutes, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's bad.
Where we got to be able to hit a couple of those shots. And I think by the end of the year, and when it's all said and done, we get the confidence and we get through the ACC play, and people start falling more into their roles and settling more into their roles. Like, I think that's going to make up for a couple points here and there. It's just last night, and they were there, and we just didn't take advantage of it. So, it's unfortunate.
In the 3-point scoring woes continue. We've had one really good game shooting the 3 ball, 3 for 19, just ugly. Oh God, so hard to watch some of that. Brissett, though, one more thing. His last 2 chances to win, despite another double-double. Let's give him some credit here. 15 points, 13 rebounds. That's his 6th double-double of the year in his first 12 games, 50%. He played the entire game, including both overtimes for 45 minutes for each of those games. His 5th time doing that for the year. And he's key. I mean, that's why Coach brought him in, and he knows that. He's going to have to play a big role. Unfortunately, his 15 points, 13 rebounds was a little overshadowed by the end of regulation. And then, of course, the charge. Kind of, this is going around. This isn't just my thought, but it's kind of obvious. Reminiscent of the CJ Fair driving to the basket during the Duke game. It was kind of that same feel when you just feel robbed, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And making the basket, and then you're thinking instantly. I jumped off the couch and I'm like, I had victory pose, arms in the air, happy as a clam. And then I see the ref point the other way. Here I am thinking we just took a 1-point lead with a foul shot. and we didn't get it. And you could tell Coach was pissed. Brissett said Coach was mad. He didn't get mad at me for doing that. He got mad at the ref. And it was, although he didn't get teed up, and Boeheim's only ejection was during that Duke game with the CJ Fair incident. Another bad call. Joe, look, Brissett, if you watch it, okay. And we'll do some Facebook feedback on this because there's some things on, everybody's talking about it. It was the big deal. But if you look, Brissett's actually trying to turn away. I mean, he barely brushed the guy. He's coming off his heels, and he flops.
Yeah.
And people are saying, well, the ref didn't have the angle. I mean, how do you not have the angle of the ground? I mean, with his feet coming off the ground. Even if you don't have the angle of the contact, his feet are moving. He wasn't planted, and the offensive player wasn't out of control. Isn't that the definition of a charge, an offensive player out of control?
That's why that call is so difficult, because sometimes it's so hard to define, and the play happens so fast, and a lot of it just comes down to really the personal opinion of what the ref sees, really. So,
Yeah, well,
I mean, I think it's one of those things where, I mean, they're supposed to be planted if it's somewhat like non-egregious. If it's something to where the guy, like you said, out of control, lowering his shoulder, the guy really doesn't have to be too planted.
okay.
You know what I mean? Because, obviously if they're the aggressor and it's pretty obvious, or they're pushing off, or, doing that, then, they're going to call it. But something like what Brissett was doing, trying to just slip to the side of him, you got to be pretty set. You got to be outside the little circle there. And you got to get pretty good contact. I mean, it just felt to me like he did the best that he could to avoid him. The guy moved into him slightly with his hip. Brissett kind of clipped him a little bit, but the guy definitely flopped because he didn't hit him square, and Brissett was trying to avoid the contact. So, I mean, overall, as far as I'm concerned, it should have been either a call on
a bucket with no whistle.
Either a bucket with no whistle or a bucket and one. Could have been either way.
Yeah,
but I mean, I would have been fine with either of those two options, but there's no way, in my opinion, that should have been an offensive foul. So
no way, and it was awful. And let's not forget too that they missed at least 2 travels. I mean, this wasn't just one bad call in this game. There was how many? At least 3 that I can think of. No calls on Battle. Poor Battle's out there getting mauled.
Yeah,
and he's not getting anything. And one of your star players, they're going to have slow games, and they're going to have bad games, I guess, so to speak. But wasn't helped out at all by the refs. That's for sure. He got hacked a couple times. They missed a couple travel calls.
There were some calls that he should be getting.
Merrick, he ended up fouling out. We talked last night about the bad foul on him. He ended up falling out with a push off, and I think, or did they call the elbow? I don't know, but it was legit.
No, yeah,
I think it was legit.
I mean, that one was legit. And my beef with that one Merrick call on the baseline was that it was directly right after Battle not getting the foul, and not only did he not get the foul when he was going up for the layup, the guy raked him across his arm, but it touched him afterwards, so it was out on him, out of bounds, and it was a no call. So, I mean, that was ridiculous when you saw that replay. I mean, that was obvious. Should have been a Battle going to the line for 2. But then right after that, on the other side of the court in defense, Jalen Adams goes to drive the baseline, and Merrick, he slides his body in front of him, and Jalen Adams kind of throws his elbow out there. There's a little bit of contact, but they call it on him, and it was just like they call it on Mark. And that was just, to me, it was more the timing. I mean, they had called some calls like that, but after
the inconsistency,
missing such an egregious call, and then all of a sudden the next time down, them not calling something that should have just been allowed to play on. There was no harm, no foul, and it looked like good defense to me. And then right after that, they missed a travel. So I mean,
oh man, and those travels.
I mean, that was bad
obvious.
Because it was just right in a row too.
God. Yeah, just a terrible sequence, just awful. And I mean, in the end, here's my quick little recap. They fought. They never gave up. Yeah, they couldn't score. They didn't. You got to take advantage of those opportunities, but they did. They did fight. They play with a ton of heart. Merrick is just. I mean, he might have the biggest fight in him out of the whole team, and it's just one of those things where you almost beat yourself despite the refs, bad calls and no calls. The game ended up really was in their hands, though. The charge call at the end did it, but let's be honest.
Well, when you lose the game, especially when you feel like you should have won, fans and players, they might be looking to see. They've not really reached, but you're looking at every little thing that maybe the missed dunk or the bad turnovers or the missed free throws or the missed calls or the call that shouldn't have been a charge. Like every little thing. If one of them would have happened, possibly could have turned it into a win in regulation and not even going into overtime. But at the end of the day, it's still a very, very close game. And with Ty, I mean, it comes down to me overall. You can be like, we want to reach for all this stuff, and no one ever wants to blame Tyus Battle because he's like, no one wants to blame their best player, you know?
Right.
You lose a game, you don't blame LeBron James or Michael Jordan. But Tyus Battle, I mean, if you're going to shoot 18 shots, you got to have more than 11 points, you know?
Yeah.
That's really my thing. And like I said, he's going to have games like this, but he has to understand too that every team is going to put their best guy on him, and they're going to try to stop him from getting the ball. And if he tries to drive, there's going to be help, and he's going to have to pass the ball, or he's going to have to pull up and make those jumpers, those mid-range jumpers. So
3 for 18 from the floor, 1 for 9 from behind the arc.
3-point land. Right. So
just not a good performance by Battle. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, it's going to happen.
It was obvious. He was thinking that just hit one. And realistically, I mean, 1 out of 9, if he would have hit one of those other ones, then that might have been the difference. But
yeah,
he's got to be able to make those shots, and not necessarily. Yeah. Maybe he doesn't have to score, his average or get up in the 20s every single game. But at the end of the game, when the game's on the line, he's got to be able to make a couple of those shots.
We've had Battle in Brissett, breaking career highs after another, and then they didn't get it done. And I mean, like you said, you can't blame them. I mean, it's a team effort in the end. But one thing I will say, another good point, I'm not going to, as much as I want to harp on them today after that game, the press, what was the press that good, or was St. Bonaventure just like oblivious? Like, you got to expect it's coming. They could not handle the press, and that's what got us back in the game again. The same thing we did against Georgetown, only they looked like, I don't know, they looked so amateur out there trying to pass the ball off when they were getting facing the Orange's full court press. It was quite a sight.
No, that's what happens when teams have the lead like that and they're trying to, have an upset away, they start getting a little nervous and, pressure gets to them,
Yeah, they just couldn't get out of it. They really blew their own lead in that sense, and Syracuse should have scored more than 15 points like we talked about with 25% of the game left.
Because we made the adjustments, and it was pretty obvious. Jalen Adams, I mean, he's the only one that scored in double figures for them, and he had 21 in the first half, and he didn't have any in the second half, and you saw
2 foul shots.
Right. So, I mean, what we changed on defense, worked. It was just we couldn't score. We couldn't score enough points, and that's I think we've talked about it. We talked about it from the beginning of the season. Then we go out and get some wins, and we don't want to talk about scoring when we win, but
yeah, I know.
Then when
when
we get these close games or when we get these losses, then that's what it is. And even in some of these wins, you've seen, them struggle. They're in those positions because they struggle to score. They've been lucky because they've had the fight in the heart to come out and come back from down 13, down 11 against some decent teams and come back and get the W. So,
all right. Well, Syracuse, next opponent coming into the Dome, Eastern Michigan. Former assistant coach Rob Murphy. He's the Cuse. What is that? The Cuse is in the house rap. What the heck was that? I forget.
No.
What was it? You remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, the Cuse in the house was back in '96.
Yeah, but he did a rap. He
did do a rap, though, yes.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Coming in Wednesday to the Carrier Dome, a game at 7:00. The Eagles are 8-2 and
3.
8-3. And that game's finally going to be on ESPN once again. We don't have to watch the ESPN app. Which, oh my gosh. Tony, we could do a whole episode about the ESPN app because there's an actual Twitter account that is at not watch ESPN app. And all it does is joke the app because it's so bad. If you're going to monopolize control of all NCAA sports and shut out local affiliates from airing their games. Now, I know it was on ACC Network Extra, but who the hell has that channel? I mean, let's be honest. I don't have it. Joe, you have a different cable provider. You don't have it, right?
What, ACC Network?
ACC Network Extra. I have the ACC Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like ACC Network 2. Anyway.
I'm not going to lie. There wasn't crap on TV last night as far as the sports channels go. I was pretty, to me, it was pretty crazy that game wasn't on TV. So, but.
Yeah, well, I agree. All right, Joe. So, turn to you. Give us the Eastern Michigan breakdown.
Eastern Michigan breakdown?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I mean, like you already said, they're 8-3. They're in the MAC just as well as Buffalo and Toledo, who are other opponents that we've had to play this year. Again, like you said, former coach Rob Murphy is the coach, or assistant coach Rob Murphy is the coach for Eastern Michigan. So expect a 2-3 zone the whole game. And
see if they can handle it this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it's going to be. I don't know exactly who their 5 starters are. I know their best 4 players, though. Elijah Minnie is a 6'10 forward who's averaging 18 points a game. James Thompson, 6'9 forward, is averaging 17.7 points a game. And Paul Jackson, 6'2 guard, averages 17 points a game. And finally, Tim Bond, a 6'7 senior guard, averages 10 points a game. So those 4 guys, that's their best 4 players. They're the ones that pretty much stuff the stat sheets with the points, rebounds, steals, assists, blocks, all that. So they do have a little bit of height, even at the guard position. Like I said, he's Tim Bond, 6'7 guard. I don't know if he plays the wing for the 2-3 zone or if he's up top, but it hasn't looked like Eastern Michigan's really played too much competition as far as their schedule goes. So again, it's another one of those teams where we really don't know exactly what we're in for.
Yay.
But well, I mean, they could make it interesting because they know
I'm sick
that,
of interesting. I want to blow. I'm sick of interesting. I want to blow someone out.
I don't think that's going to happen. I would be. I would be. I really believe that there's not going to be too many games that we win comfortably this year, just based upon our score, unless somebody else figures it out and steps up. If Matt Moyer can come in and he can be a double guy.
I've been waiting for him to really step it up, and it's just it started to happen. He had that one big breakout game.
Yeah, well, I think with him, he's just a player where he's just got to play his game, hustle, and be a team player, get the rebounds, and then just take what's given to him. You know, when he does get the chances, like when he can flash the baseline and get some dunks from Frank Howard, and, you know, every now and again he'll have those nights like UConn. But he's got to be the guy that's playing defense, hustling, getting offensive boards, defensive boards, stuff like that, because you can just tell that when he tries too hard to do something, then it doesn't really end up that good. So he's just got to let it go. And I think really Marek is the one that I think, especially last night, you saw a couple times where he started to drive. He's a heady player, so he can pass it good. He's got great court awareness as far as knowing where he is on the court, where, you know, he's not going to step out of bounds on a rebound like Chukwa yesterday. And, you know, he's just one of those guys where he's gonna be a majority. He might not be starting, but he'll be in there at the end of the games. And I think he's the one that should start possibly looking for his game a little bit more on offense, because something needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because this is how they're going to play defense. The guards are going to be all up in Frank Howard's, you know, grill, trying to get him messed up and create turnovers.
And they can create turnovers on Frank Howard. And
They'll have their best defensive forward, athletic guy on Brissett, and then they're going to have the best defensive guard on Battle, and they're going to dare everybody else to beat them. And with Eastern Michigan, they know our struggles with the 3-point line. So, I mean, who's to say that they're not going to try to trick us into, you know, shooting out a whole bunch of threes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, you know, the 2 games we lost, we got crushed with the 3. I know it didn't happen in the second half, but, you know, it's the 3 ball is because we can't match it, and we haven't been able to hit it, and it's been so cold for us that, you know, like you said, something's got to happen. Someone's got to step up. Someone's got to do something, because everybody knows what we're going to do. everybody knows what we're going to do. It's not easy to stop it, but it is going to be taken into account that, like we said, they can force turnovers on Frank Howard, and they know we're not hitting mid-range jumpers and we can't score 3.
Yeah.
So
pretty much. I mean, we're just going to have to play smart. And again, too, it's just one of those games where it's during the holiday season, and he's going to let these guys go home for Christmas for a couple of days, and they got to be back for practice and get ready for the game. And who knows what kind of – I mean, obviously the students aren't going to be there. I think last night's crowd was decent considering the situation. It looked like a lot of St. Bonaventure fans.
20,976.
Which isn't awful.
No, not for Christmas break.
And there seemed like there was a lot of St. Bonaventure fans, and the fact that they had to leave early and at halftime, I think riled up the fans, the St. Bonaventure fans, which in turn riled up the Syracuse fans, and they got into it. And I thought that they did their part of being loud and getting the team going during that 15-2 run in the second half.
Yeah, they did. They got loud. They helped out a little bit, and it was, you like hearing that, especially non-conference. Let's call it 21,000. Let's be honest, 21,000 non-conference during the holiday break. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, and I know St. Bonaventure brought some fans in there, but still 21,000. I don't care where the fans come from.
It was decent. It was decently loud when St. Bonaventure took that lead. Yeah, so you definitely could tell that there was definitely more than usual.
The what was it? There was one dunk. It wasn't a lob pass. I think. Was it a lob pass? Okay,
I think it was.
Yeah, that got loud. It got really uncomfortably loud for me. So to be honest with you,
to know that you're at home and it was that loud,
yeah. I mean, it clipped the mics. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I mean, it is what it is. But after Eastern Michigan, we're going to open up conference play on New Year's Eve at 6:00 against Virginia Tech. So we will try to come back. We definitely should try to preview that game.
Yeah, we should. We'll have one definitely after the other one.
Yeah.
Just hope that they can go home and get ready, get their mind ready. So can't play close games like that, but I think there's going to be a lot of close games like that. So when you play with fire that much, eventually you're going to get burnt. So
hopefully they can. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say, if we struggle on offense, this year, which is looking like we are, and unless we find out some answers, then that's what these games are going to look like. Almost every single one of them.
I know it. Cardiac cues. Yep. Like you said, the wins are going to be clutching your chest, which seems to be par for the course. Clean it up. Let's start.
And I told you yesterday I was nervous. I called you up.
Yeah, you did. You hit it last episode 44. You hit it in your preview. So
I thought that they were the last team that had a legit shot of beating us. Yeah.
Yeah. So you hit it. That's why you're hired.
Yay!
All right. Hey, everybody, have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy it.
Yes.
Be
safe
with the family. Be safe.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't do anything stupid. And we'll be back after Christmas, after the Eastern Michigan game. We'll preview Virginia Tech. For Joe, I'm Sean. This has been episode 45. We are out.
You just heard the Cuse Nation podcast with Sean and Joe.